to take some action, some advocacy in terms of the climate change. And my question really is that the activities, the actions that are being proposed are quite incremental, even if they are significant. And we cannot isolate ourselves from the global situation. And as we breach 1.5 or probably 3 degrees, we cannot avoid the consequences of that. So my question is really very important, I think, from my point of view. It is difficult for us to think that we can change the behavior of humans and animals towards abatement and towards reduction of emissions. I'm talking about human and animal. Okay? And the solution seems to be technology. That is from the point of view, for example, of more international airports like Cochin, Kerala, India, which is completely solar, or pushing the commercialization of Impulse 2, which is commercial aircraft, solar driven. And Bill Gates recently provided substantial investment to a startup in Australia to develop a feed additive for cattle so that we can reduce methane gas substantially. In other words, we cannot reduce 30% of the methane gas coming from farting cattle. But now we're talking about technology, right? Wherein now you have additive into the feed so that they would reduce methane emissions. So the question really is technology really the way out of it? Because that was the way out of it when the Club of Rome said that we are going to out of this world. Okay? The limits to growth. And the limits to growth was actually limited by technology. In other words, I don't think we can change human behavior and animal behavior, no matter how many COPs we will have. Okay? We're now on the 28th COP. We can go to 29, 30, 30. We will reach 2050. I don't think we will be here. Okay? So the question I'm asking is this the way to do that? And I appreciate that we are doing all of these incremental things for the Philippines. Fine, I think that's nice. But in the end, we cannot get out of this situation when temperatures rise, floods gets more, we cannot even predict where they're going. So the question really is, what is the option? Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. That's a very important question. And I think the answer here is that the response needs to be an all of the above. We cannot depend, there is no silver bullet. There is no one thing that we can say, this is how we're going to solve the problem. We need to act on a large range of axes. And here we're lucky that technology is going to help. As I mentioned, at this point, solar and renewable are much cheaper than alternative sources. So it makes sense to adopt them. Even if there were no climate change, it would still make sense to adopt solar and wind power. There's a number of things that will make sense. And as you know, it's really dramatic how the prices, the costs of solar power and wind have declined in the last decade. If we had done this analysis 10 years ago, we would not have found the same reductions in cost of energy generation that resulting from switching to renewables that we find now. And every indication are that these will continue to diminish. If hopefully the cost of battery storage will also diminish, because that's a pre-constraint on using renewables such as solar, which are intermittent. So technology is really going to help us a lot. Now, even technology doesn't happen by chance. It happens because there's government support to it. It happens because there's private sector support to things. The kind of cost reductions that are happening are a combination of pushing by the government and learning by the private sector. So that will all help. And as the cost of climate change becomes higher, many alternatives become more attractive. And as we learn how to do these alternatives, we become better at it, and the costs come down. So there's a virtuous circle in many of these instances. So I think technology will help a lot. But I would not be as pessimistic as you seem to be about behavior change. We've seen over and over again that behavior can in fact change. Look at smoking, for example. It used to be almost universal, and now in many countries it's become very rare to see people smoking because people have realized how bad it is for them individually, and also people have realized how bad it is for somebody else to smoke next to you. So even if that person wants to keep smoking, the social disapproval is quite strong, and now smoking levels are much lower than they used to be. If you had asked 50 years ago, would people stop smoking? People say, oh no, people will never change. People do change. When the secret context changes, when the knowledge changes, people do change. Look at birth rates. Birth rates used to be very high. They've been declining throughout the world as well. So I'm not saying it will happen everywhere. I'm not saying it's easily. I'm just not as pessimistic.
I think my question was really not saying that behavior is not going to change. I was saying behavioral change in the context of an approaching 1.53 degrees centigrade. In other words, there is a constraint, and what we're seeing is that behavioral change is not forthcoming. All right, COP28, we don't think it's going to come. All right, so in other words, come on, man, this is not going to take place, and therefore, what's going to solve our problem?
It's technology. Okay, I mean, yes, technology is critical, but I think behavior change as well will contribute, and is contributing already. Yes, could it happen faster? I wish, and if people who are less set in their ways than some of us who are not quite as young as we used to be, you guys have find it much easier to change your behavior and set examples for the rest of us. So yes, but again, we need all of the above. We need to push for behavior change. We need to push for good technology options. We need to push for institutional and other changes that make these, going back to the question about what we need to make to have solar work. It's not just putting in solar panels, it's a whole regulatory structure with the distribution grid. All of these things need to happen. So it really needs to be an all of the above response. No matter